Y'all show is ghetto.
Allegedly.
The largest and the oldest, the baddest and the boldest, the most loved and the most hated, the most feared and feared, the most cussed and discussed, civil rights organization in America. We are the NAACP.
You are now tuned in to the NAACP President Show with Mike McClanahan and Eugene Collins.
All right, we're live with the NAACP presidents. This is your local branch president, Eugene Collins, alongside here our statewide convention president, President Michael McClanahan. Now, you can catch us on WTQT on Sundays at 5 o'clock. You can also catch us here on the Getaways Network every Sunday as well. So, President McClanahan, we're going to jump right into this thing. And, you know, this weekend is actually Juneteenth. Juneteenth is today. And a lot of folks don't even understand what Juneteenth is, President McClanahan. A lot of folks don't get it. I'm going to jump right into you. What's your thoughts on Juneteenth?
Man, you know, Juneteenth, as a young lad growing up in the town of Zawali, there was a lady that had family in Houston and Galveston, and they would celebrate this holiday, Juneteenth. It wasn't too big in my town, but she brought the celebration to Zawali. And so I got into a little bit of Juneteenth, but when I moved to Baton Rouge and became chairman of the Gus Young Nonviolence Committee, we used to have the largest celebration of freedom in the Baton Rouge area. You know, to be able to celebrate the freedom that we were not afforded with the rest of the country in terms of being able to go where you want to go, not be owned by a human being. Human beings owning human beings. That's some weird sounding stuff, man. But to be free in this land of America, to be able to go about anybody's business, your own business, just like anybody else, man, was tremendous climb. But you know, with the Juneteenth celebration, the freedom that was afforded us by Abraham Lincoln, came Louisiana and the black codes and the Jim Crow laws. So you know, you might have been physically not enslaved, but economically and otherwise, Louisiana made sure that you were still enslaved.
Yeah, President McClanahan, I want to take it back just a little bit farther, right? And, you know, in 1862, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. 1862, actually, was it? 1862 is when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, Congress didn't bring it into law until January 1st of 1863.
Okay.
Some 2.5 years later, on June 19th, 1865, a Union general rode into Texas and actually let those slaves know that they had been emancipated in the Emancipated Proclamation back in 1862 by Abraham Lincoln. Some 2.5 years had passed at that point. And there's a lot of different theories on like what happened and why word didn't get to Texas. You'll hear one theory that the messenger got killed on the way to Texas, right? And then you'll hear another story that the Confederate States actually thought that they were going to win the war, right? So they didn't see a need to give up their slaves because they thought they would win the war. So some slave owners in other states actually just sent their slaves to Texas because they knew the slaves in Texas didn't know about the Emancipation Proclamation, so they would move slaves to Texas. But it's a long road to that. And not only that, like most folks think, well, you know, when the general actually gave that order, all happiness came, right? And you just alluded to it. Not only that, fun fact, when the general was explaining to the slaves that they were free, most slaves that were listening to the speech decided to leave right then. They ain't wait. It was later coined the Great Scatter. Because they basically just scattered, right?
Hell out of here.
they got out of there, right?
Leave it.
Like,
bye.
I'm out. Y'all can stay, but I'm gone. So they didn't
See ya.
even, he said, y'all free, and most of them just started moving, right? They didn't even wait. They just got up out of there.
Keep my clothes. I don't care.
That's like historically, that's what happened, right? And we know that some of them left and went up north. A lot of them went to find their families, right? Some of them stayed. And then some of them, the part you talking about, they faced automatic oppression because of their freedom. In addition, a lot of them were killed. A lot of them were shot for trying to leave. Some of them were hung for trying to leave, right? So like, it wasn't just peaches and cream. That set the road to a lot of different things. And as we talk about Juneteenth celebrations, and slaves, former slaves at this point, almost started celebrating Juneteenth almost instantly. So when people say it don't mean nothing, like, that ain't really the history. It means something. Maybe we don't celebrate it properly, but it definitely means something, right? So you had the slaves decided to hold their own Juneteenth celebrations, but back then it was illegal for them to celebrate Juneteenth in a public setting. I mean, they couldn't do it at a church, they couldn't do it in a building and nothing like that. And in addition to that, they could not wear nice clothes. It was against the law for a former slave to wear nice clothes. So they wore clothes that were both torn and tattered. So when Juneteenth came around, they would find the best clothes that they could find, right? They would find whatever didn't have as many holes in, whatever didn't have many tears in it, and they would wear those clothes to the Juneteenth celebration, and they would celebrate Juneteenth around rivers and lakes because they could not do it legally. And we always ask where that red fruit thing came from. During Juneteenth celebration, our ancestors would drink red soda, they would eat strawberries, and they would eat red velvet cake to pay homage to the blood that was shed during slavery. That's where that come from. So you got that love for red velvet cake. It actually came from a Juneteenth celebration, right? But that's where it's grounded in. And not to mention that, like, you look at what they did in Houston, right? Where I think it was somewhat 800 slaves actually got together and put their funds together and bought acres of land in Houston and founded Emancipation Park for them to celebrate Juneteenth in, because again, they couldn't sell it even as far as the 1950s, before Dr. King started integrating stuff. They couldn't celebrate it in public parks, so they bought their own park to do it in. These are all former slaves, right? We think about like how many times we beg for funding, right? These former slaves got together and bought their own land to have their own celebration.
You know, you talk. I remember reading too that they said that the reason it took 2 years because Abraham Lincoln and the Confederates and the cotton owners, they came up with the agreement that they would let the slaves pick the cotton, the industry, which was King Cotton, the industry in the South, harvest the cotton, so that by the time they were free, because they knew wasn't gonna be no slaves on the plantation picking no cotton for sure. And then also the Union Army came down. That the Union Army that came down to give word was basically a black regiment of black Union soldiers coming down to say, "Be free."
Well, some of them, right? But a good number of them weren't. And then one thing else is that when they freed the slaves, the general told them, like, "Hey, we need you're free, but you can't go out in public. You can't loiter around, and we're not going to defend you in lottery." Which basically means, look, y'all don't go around, walk around, mess with these white
don't
folks.
Go around with no signs saying I'm free. You know, that's crazy, man. You know, because to tie freedom to some other kind of stuff that says, well, these are the impediments. You're free, but there are some obstacles, impediments to true freedom. Mm-hmm. Those things still exist today. You know, today I was a part of a couple of Juneteenth celebrations this weekend. I wound up in Vidalia with State Representative Travis Johnson and others in that area. But the thing that I get up, my wife and I was driving, and there's a federal holiday and a state holiday. Federal holiday means the federal offices are closed. State holiday means state offices are closed. And my wife and I was driving up to North Louisiana, and that was on the other day, and seeing how many offices, even though the state office was closed Friday, how many white guys, white employees, state employees were still willing to work, because they were probably saying, it ain't our damn holiday, it's their holiday. I don't work. So I remember last year and this year, we saw some workers working.
Yeah, but you got to think about it too, President McClanahan. This is why I say it's important to recognize Juneteenth, right? Since the inception of Juneteenth, some white people in this country have worked to make it either illegal or not known about. When they couldn't make it illegal anymore, because Dr. King was out there integrating things and changing those laws, and Dr. King actually centered the Poor People's Campaign around Juneteenth to bring awareness to Juneteenth. A lot of people don't know that. Like, he centered his effort around Juneteenth to bring awareness to it. But for the longest, they put laws in place to make sure that we didn't celebrate Juneteenth. And then after that, they made sure that it wasn't put in textbooks, so you couldn't learn about Juneteenth. And still to this day, you won't find Juneteenth in a lot of curriculums, right? They don't talk about it. So it's up to us to tell our kids about what Juneteenth is and stuff like that. And I think the bill that Representative Larry Saddles actually got passed last year is going to help that in the future. But right now, it's largely not in the schools, right? So when you think about that, there is still very much an effort out there to make sure people don't know about Juneteenth.
Man, I was reading, and the wife sent me something where most state offices would say we're closed because Juneteenth holiday, and I think one state agency put we're closed because of Juneteenth holiday. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna find it in a minute, but everybody should celebrate the fact that we're all Americans or something like that. So they go, I said that's crazy. They want us to really make sure that we celebrate the 4th of July. Mm-hmm. They were really free. You fought a war, we fought a war with you to make sure everybody's free, but we weren't free. So, but then you want to tell them, look, don't celebrate Juneteenth. You should be free to celebrate the 4th of July freely. No, too many of my ancestors died, and we're still shackled because the oppression that the oppressor wants us to stay in. January 6th was real. Every time you try to overthrow your own government, so you try to say, I'm not really a July the 4th person, I'm a January the 6th guy.
President McClanahan, just give him time. Just give him time. Just give him time. I don't know if you saw what Marjorie Taylor Greene said, but
I didn't know what she said.
Just give them time. They're gonna make that a holiday soon enough, right? But this is a real thing, and this is the other thing about Juneteenth, right? Juneteenth was not just a celebration.
Yeah, that's right.
They gathered. It was a day of strategy. It was a reminder of how much work we had to do. It was a strategy day where they would get together and figure out, hey, these are the things that we need to do to push black people forward. So it wasn't just them gathering on rivers and lakes with red velvet cake and strawberry soda, as history tells us. And strawberries, right? And watermelon. That wasn't all it was, right? They got together and made plans to push black people forward. It was a day of strategy, of developing strategy, right? And that's something that I would love to see added back to Juneteenth, not just the programs, but let's have some meetings on Juneteenth, right? That day that we're off, let's hold some convenings about strategies to push the black community forward, to highlight the resiliency of the black community, and that's what Juneteenth was about. Juneteenth was about highlighting how resilient the black community was. That's why they ate red fruit and drank red soda and ate red cake, to pay homage to the blood that was lost during slavery. That's why they did all those things, so that we could know we always had to keep moving to push African Americans forward. And President McClanahan, I challenge folks to say ain't much change, right? Because we look at the things in our community that people don't know about, right? I looked last night and I sent the video to Johnny where the mayor of New Orleans was about to get in a physical altercation with somebody who didn't know who she was in New Orleans, right? Wow. And I think about some of the things here locally, some of the things that we don't know about the schools, right? Some of the things that we don't know about curriculum, some of the things that we don't know about government and contracting. President McClanahan, we still are not getting information. So, you would think in 2022 it's changed a whole lot, but people are still keeping things from us. And I don't say keeping it from us because it's there, we're just not reading it, right? But information still isn't making it to people that look like you and I. So it hasn't changed very much. And then when you look at some of the things that I don't like, right? Like I saw Walmart was selling different color ice cream for Juneteenth, and some other company was selling cakes and T-shirts. Y'all don't turn this day into something commercial. Yeah. Like Jay-Z saying the white man make money off all that. No. Right. Like don't turn this into something that is not supposed to be. It was always meant to pay homage to those who bled and went through that pain of slavery, so that you and I could sit here and speak so freely. And for those that had the ability to gather and strategize about how we push black people forward. That's what this day is about. And I feel like it's already getting lost since they made it a holiday, right?
Yeah. Then you talk about, my problem, just like you, is that, we have a three-day whole weekend. Out of the whole weekend, you got to tell me there's got to be something positive that should come out of Juneteenth celebration, other than we took a day off, we ate barbecue, we drank some beer, played some spades, and that was it. No, It's got to be more. It has to be more. For us to sit here and say that's all we're gonna do, it's not a day off. You don't take a day off. You know, you take a minute off. I haven't taken a day off because I believe, as you alluded to, Gene, in the free dissemination of information, our people perish for a lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
We will perish. You know, if somebody has, this is in our own communities, if somebody know about some jobs that's black in our community, you think he's gonna post it on Facebook, there's some jobs going on and such, go down and get, no. He'll keep it to himself and probably die going home, and the information dies right along with him. We have to stop that. We have to turn it. The other part to this is that we have to continue to pour to young people our history. We have to. I was sharing with some young brothers, hey, young kings, these are young kings. These are young kings, young princes. We have to tell them that because, as you alluded to earlier, the commercialization of being black in America would keep us dead, dumb, and dying.
And that's exactly what's happening. So I look at the imagery of like where we are today as a people. We got people that live in this city and they don't know who our mayor is. They don't know what City Hall is, right? They've never been to a school board meeting. So we're still not getting the information. And for me, when you look at the history and the historical elements of Juneteenth, that's what it's supposed to be about, refocusing our efforts, refocusing people to know that we still got work to do. We still got things to push for that we don't seem to be pushing for. Not on a grand enough scope, right? Some of us are, some of us out there doing good work and all of those good things. But we actually talk about the crux of the people that some of these issues actually affect. We cannot get them in the rooms. And that's on us as organizations, right? That's on us as whatever you call yourself, activist, community leader. People call themselves so many things right now. I heard change agent, advocate, influencers, I like all kinds of stuff.
That?
I don't know, President McClanahan. I lose track of all this stuff, right? So people say, man, who are you? I'm like, I'm president of NAACP. I live right down there in the South. Like, I like to run my mouth. I ain't got no title, Doc.
Right.
But like we're supposed to spend this day refocusing that, and that's how our people spent this day, celebrating, paying homage to the folks that paid a price that we can't imagine for us to sit here in this country.
I remember when I was over the Gus Young Advisory Committee, and we would have the Juneteenth celebration in Gus Young. We purposely would bring in persons to give. I don't believe in giving you anything without giving you some information gonna feed your mind and feed your soul.
Yeah.
You know, people come out there wanting to get free food, and you're gonna get the food. But first, I got somebody gonna give you some information. As long as we do that, because that's a drawing card. If I gotta give you a box of tennis shoes, and that's the drawing card, right? But when I got you, I have a captive voice. We should always do that. Put some information. Somebody say, "Ed, I don't care for about 5 minutes worth." You planting seeds. We have to plant more seeds, man. We want to reap a harvest without planting seeds.
Yeah, and you know, shout out to the folks that did do it, because I tell you, every Juneteenth event I passed by, they had that information that you're talking about, right? And that's a direct link to historically how people have done these things, right? But in addition to that, and this is not any knock on anybody, this is a challenge for the NAACP, right? At one of these Juneteenth, we need to hold a convening, a strategy session of mass numbers, because that's what our people did, right? And really put these plans together about how we continue to move black people forward in this country. And that's something that we can do together.
Yeah. You know, Dr. William Barber, he was on the national board. He was also a state conference president, if I'm not mistaken, from North Carolina. He had an organization, a movement called the Poor People's Campaign. Mm-hmm. And we linked up with him because I understood, you know, as Dr. King, he was moving toward economic freedom for our people too.
Yeah.
And so to tie all that in, man, you know, we can, as you just alluded to, bring the masses down. You know, we can get strategies going, because a couple weeks ago I was with the Black Voters Matter convening in New Orleans. You know, I did a survey, you know, I had to do the survey, see how well it was. There should have been more people at the table. You know, that would be a prime opportunity for us to start strategizing. So we got Black Voters Matter, we got the Poor People's Campaign, NAACP, some other organizations. See, that's a way for us to strategize to move our people forward. Because if we don't have a strategy to succeed and move our people forward, the enemy got a strategy to keep it down, to keep it dead, and to eliminate you. They're doing it. The extinct black folks, they're doing it now.
Yeah, you're spot on, President McClanahan, because what I'm trying to say in all of this, I think you put it in perfect words. Juneteenth to our people was not a day off. It was a day away from your normal work.
Right.
But it was very much them getting together and catching up and saying, hey, this is how we push people forward. And just to think, like, you had former slaves put their money together, I think history tells us about $800, and bought that land to found Emancipation Park. And today, President McClanahan, we waiting on a check from entities to do stuff like that, right? We ain't getting together, pooling money and doing events like that no more. We ain't doing that. We've lost that togetherness through in our freedom. And I want to challenge the concept of freedom too, because it's hard to free something you came and stole. I'm just gonna keep it real. Like we gonna free y'all. Now we know ain't nobody gave y'all to us, but we gonna free y'all. Like, and people will say, well, they gave them on the banks of the Africa. I'm like, where do you think they got them from? Like, you think they just willfully say, hey, I'm here. I'm just giving you, giving myself to you to do whatever. Like you idiot.
Somebody owning somebody else, that just always kills me, man. I ain't owned by nobody. I'm a child of the living God. I'm telling you, I'm gonna die like that.
Yeah, you think about this concept of freedom, right? And freedom in itself is a ridiculous concept, right? Because you have to have had the right to own a human being and free him, right? Nah, June 19th, 1865, some general came down there and said, look, these were some thieving folks down here. They stole human beings. And now we gotta let y'all go. As a matter of fact, if y'all want to stay, y'all gonna have to stay as their employees.
and stay quiet.
And plantation owners, these are now your employees.
Yeah, shut the hell up.
Yeah, and then some plantations still didn't tell some slaves until after the harvest. Let's not talk about that. They didn't tell some slaves until after the harvest. And there's some horror stories in Louisiana about slavery going on much longer, right? But like it is impossible to free something that you stole. Like we got super producer in the room with us today, Johnny Domino. Johnny, if you go to the store and you steal a shirt and then you say, look, on the 19th of June, I'm gonna go ahead and free it. What you think the police gonna do to you? They gonna lock him up. They gonna lock him up and put him under the key.
Because he's Johnny Domino.
Yeah, you talk about human rights violations and stuff like that. Ain't nobody never brought this stuff. Malcolm started talking about taking human rights violations to the UN in his course of things, and then he got killed, right? So when you look at this, there's never been a price paid for what happened. Even the 40 acres and a mule that we were promised, if we bring it up now, they say, stop asking for handout. Even though they get...
I still want my 40 acres. Don't give me no damn swamp land. Don't give me none in the desert. I want my 40 acres and get my mule. I can make it work.
Yeah, and we talk about how far we've gotten as a people, right? We say, well, we've had a black president. We still ain't had no former slave, like the descendant of a former slave, be a president. Like, that's a whole nother conversation. I know black folks don't like to talk about that.
They don't like to talk about that. You said the man, just that he was free, he wasn't no slave.
I mean, Obama was not the descendant of a slave. We still have not had a descendant of the slave ascend to the highest office of this land. I can't.
You ain't say the man was not descendant. He was just descendant of slave folk, but free folk.
Like, I'm like, because people like, man, we fight. I heard somebody say there's a slave in the White House. I'm like, slave? Like, nah, he was like, none of his folks was no slave. Like, none of them. Like, it wasn't true, right? So we still have some gaps to make up here when we say the true descendants of slaves. Like, there's some stuff that we still haven't achieved in this country, and I think sometimes because we want to be, this go along to get along population today. Our people, our ancestors weren't. They understood what it was, right? Dr. King, he once said that he thought he had walked his people into a burning house, right? Yeah. Because he looked at the morals of America. He said, hey, there's some of this stuff starting to rub off on y'all. Like, I ain't know it would, but it's starting to rub off on y'all. Dr. King, when he integrated, he always thought that Negroes would get in the boardrooms and remember that they were Negroes. But he started to see some of them get in the boardrooms, get in the political seats, and forget that. And he was disgusted in the 60s. Imagine what he think now.
Oh man, I'm not a proponent, and I don't advocate violence. But he probably pulled out something, James.
This is what I've been marching for.
To take this black man.
I'm glad you brought that because people think about Dr. King as this non-violent figure, but when you read the history books, they tell you like Dr. King would have fought you. He'd roll around in the grass with you if it came to that, right? Dr. King's house looked like an arsenal. He was an avid gun collector, right? So when we think about this image of Dr. King that we've been sold and the image of what he is, totally different. We bring this up in the context of the show because he implemented the Poor People's Campaign around Juneteenth to bring homage to it, to bring awareness to the fact that Juneteenth existed. So the folks that say, "Hey, Juneteenth ain't important," I don't think that. I don't think we celebrate it properly. But I think celebrating it properly means that you got to give people the room to celebrate it how they want, right? But at the same time, I think there's some things that we miss just because we don't know, and we never sit down and tell our kids this. And even some facts about Juneteenth, I really probably dug deeper into Juneteenth when I became president. And that was, I guess 5 or 6 years ago now, right? And that was only because all of these folks were asking me to speak at these Juneteenth programs. So I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and study.
Right.
Yeah. But before then, I can't say that I actually had the information. And when I started reading, I'm like, man, we should be doing something about this, right?
Gene, two things come to mind, too, when you talk about strategizing and Juneteenth. Dr. King and others would say, in order for us part of strategy is to assimilate into America, but the way you're going to assimilate, you have to become educated into the ways of society. That means you have to become educated. You have to become educated either in reading and writing or some type of certification. That's how you don't assimilate from the banks jumping up in the river. No, you can't get to the boardroom if you can't speak boardroom language. I don't expect everybody to go to the boardroom. Everybody has a role and a place to play in this here. We have to strategize so everybody can go to their respective corners and go in and stand in their respective lanes. We can't overcome and overachieve nothing if everybody's operating in silos in their own valleys or their own molehills. We can't. We have to be. The other thing is, this is the democracy. Now, January 6th, white folk try to overthrow their own democracy. But the same democracy they try to overthrow is going to be the same one that's going to give them their demise. But in order for us to continue to become liberated, we have to understand democracy and what it means to be a representative form of government, because there are some forms that we'll be able to partake in directly. There are some other parts that somebody that we elect or we have that's going to speak on our behalf. We got to know those pieces too. And I walk around with a shirt on that says, at some point in time, we vote them in and vote them out.
Yeah.
That's a basically, the way society is going. They say put in the book because they what? I ain't gonna read it.
No, and sad but true. And President McClanahan, something you said, I think is a great point. Liberation, right? Because that's what we're celebrating, liberation. Yeah. Ain't nobody freed us. They liberated something that they stole.
Yeah, right.
They gave back stolen property.
Yeah.
That's just what it was. And I think let's kill this notion that Abraham Lincoln was the savior of the slaves.
He had a reason for doing it. He had a reason. It goes back to the point I'm making, because you touched on it. They thought that the Confederates gonna win the war.
Yeah.
And the last ditch effort for President Lincoln was to let me do something to push things in my way. But I truly believe that when he made the pact, we got to make sure that we get this economic cotton stuff picked and sold, because that's how they was making money. Cotton was king back then.
Yeah.
Cotton was king, and if we didn't pick the cotton, there was no money. If they ain't got no money, what they were gonna do?
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln, if you read some of his less famous letters, he was a devout racist.
He was low down.
He loved the Union more than he loved slavery, right? And that's why slaves were freed. They were freed to preserve this country.
Yep, that's right, Gene.
So when you look at the context of Juneteenth, and what you should know is that not only did you build this country on our backs, we also saved it. Mm-hmm. And that's something that our kids aren't told. So when folks say, well, look like some black folks always asking for a handout, there ain't no handout. That's what you owe them.
That's right. Owe them that and more. If you multiply, there's always something that says, well, back then $200 was $200, but in today's time would be so much money, right? Mm-hmm. So if you get to 40 acres and a mule, if you can quantify that, it can be quantified, by the way. quantify that then and what it means now. Give me that money now. You can say, go get your 40 acres and your mule, or get the money equivalent. Give me my money equivalent. We should have an option.
Well, now you got black folks saying if you give some of these people 40 acres of a mule, they're going to go buy a Caddy and a Mercedes and put some 20s on it and waste it. I'm like, well, that's their money.
I tell somebody, let me do with my money what I want to do. It's my money. So if I give you some money, Gene, and I say, well, I want my money back. You say, man, no, it's my money. Give it to me. If I want you to have it, I'll give it to you. But if I don't, I might want to put it in the ashtray and burn it. I might want to roll it up and smoke it. It's my money.
And you look at Native Americans in this country, right? You look at other nationalities that went through war stuff, right? They have received reparations. Like, we're about the only population in America that hasn't, right? We're literally, and there may be some out there, but we're literally one of the only populations that hadn't received reparations. And I've even heard the argument be, well, we wouldn't understand how to even disperse it, right? Because of the argument I just made about former President Obama, who I love, right? He just wasn't a descendant of a slave, so we still hadn't had a descendant of a slave be president. But when you look at that, that's the argument. Like, we wouldn't know who to give it to. Now, California is doing some good work around there, right? So you but California is typically 20 or 30 years ahead of everybody else, right?
Yeah.
In fixing things. So I would anticipate this being no different. But that needs to be the crux of, I think, this Juneteenth strategy, this Juneteenth conversation, to finally get that reparations that's due to us as a people. And not because people just want or are begging for this 40 acres and a mule, right? And we know it wouldn't be 40 acres and a mule today. It would probably be some monetary compensation or paying some student loans, whatever, right? Yeah. But that would be a real driving point for our people, that it meant something on January 19th, 1865. Because until you pay for what you stole, you really haven't corrected anything as a country. And so we need to get out of this freedom notion. This country has never paid for what they stole.
Okay, and so the other part to that is the oppressor is saying, the oppressor's great grandson was saying, that my great grandpapa. I got nothing to do with that. Oh yeah, the sins of your grandpapa are imputed to you. You low down like it because it's part of your DNA. And so the things that you all did then, the consequences need to be paid for it now and this time. But it goes back to the part of education I was telling you about. And so in order for us to get taught the best education, we had to integrate the schools because they were giving us substandard books and all that. And so back in the 50s and the 60s, we filed federal lawsuits and we came up with consent decrees. Well, fast forward to 2021, 2022, the school system is saying the original plaintiffs are now dead. We shouldn't have to deal with this consent decree. I say the plaintiffs might, but their children and their descendants are still very much alive, and we're still feeling the effects of a low-down educational system.
And not only that, President McClanahan, because when we had this conversation a couple weeks ago about true equity, and people will say, well,
there you go, Jane.
I fight for all kids in the school district. Well, you ain't fighting for equity, because equity is not an all-kid fight. So when you say that dumb stuff,
I'm with you.
I'm sorry.
I ain't sorry, Gene.
When you say that dumb stuff, equity is not an all-person fight, because not all people need equity. So when you say, well, I'm fighting for all the kids in the district, that's real all lives matter-ish. I'm just going to start calling some people out on that, right? That's real all lives matter-ish. Now, I ain't see it, all y'all out there with the all lives matter hashtag, but I'm going to start giving it to you every time you say you're fighting for every school, every kid in the district, but you say you're fighting for equity. I'm going to call you Mr. or Mrs. All Lives Matter, because that's what it is.
Miss Karen, all lives matter.
Equity is not an all people fight.
Chad, all lives matter.
Like I'm fighting for everybody and equity. Like, no, you can't do both. You can't do both. People have allowed you to think that you could do both, but you can't do both. And President McClanahan, you bring up a great point, because it was like, I remember, like, we talk about the gains that we made in education as a part of DSEG and all of that stuff, right? We probably had our height of professionals in education and professionals with PhDs in education around 1990, right? 1990 is also the year that education in our community started to go back on the decline. So at a point when we had the most African Americans we've ever had in education as a profession, we saw education decline. You want to know why? Because they was there worried about all students. And not to say that they shouldn't,
Right.
but equity is a very different fight.
Different fight.
Equity ain't about all kids. Like you say, well, I'm fighting for equity, but I'm gonna need all the kids. No, that ain't how that works.
That's right. That's not equity.
That ain't how that work. And if you don't believe me, like go to the dictionary, Google it. You're just not about equity. You're about equality. And that's okay. That's okay that you're about equality. But you can't roll with me, because that ain't what I do. So if you're about equality, I love you. We can go have lunch. We can be friends. We can text each other memes, right? But you can't help me. I don't even want you around me in this fight.
I don't want you around
Like, because you can't help me because you don't understand what equity means.
Right.
Equity ain't an all-person thing. That's real. All lives matter-ish. That's just what it is. But let's just keep it real. Some of these black folks that made y'all, they made them think that was okay to think that way. Like, and they just sat in these rooms and pump these folks up so that they could push their careers and messages forward, because they knew that's how they do it, but that's how they got funding, by being nice to certain groups or certain people. So they've done that and they made y'all think something bad. Like, don't get it twisted. I'm not being mean. I'm saying what they say in private to you publicly. That's all.
Gee, what kind of kills me is that, the NAACP, what we've done is fought and opened doors for everybody. And when they get in these positions, Gene, they forget who fought and opened doors to get them there. The cause and the mission has died. The NAACP's mission since 1909 has been the same.
Yeah.
It's been the same. If I die, the mission is still there. So when somebody gets these positions that we have fought to get, they should not forget the mission that got them there. Continue the mission. But the other part to this is Gene, we also know that all's kinfolk and kinfolk, and that, that we had a lot of Sambos going around here, man, fighting us just like we fighting a man. He said, somebody said, we sick, master? Yeah, we sick. He got a cold, but you got a cold too.
Yeah, like they say, master gets sick, he say we sick. Like, what do you say? Like, the big house catch on fire, he fighting harder to put the house off than the master is, right? Nah, I'm out here praying for a strong wind.
I was saying, the roof is on fire, we don't need no water.
Let that mother... Let it burn. Like, hey, President McClanahan, I ain't going to burn down nothing, right? I ain't going to be out there with the gas can. I am not going to have the matches. But do not call me and ask me to help put nothing out. Do not call me and ask me to stop them kids. Like, there's some buildings that need to be burned down. That's just what it is. We didn't ask y'all to fix it. Like, if they want to get together and burn some stuff down, like, President McClanahan, come on now. Baton Rouge is past time for a good burning. Let's just keep it real for a second. It's past time.
I know a lot of friends in the fire department. I'm going to call them over for a water down at my house somewhere, man, at a park.
Man, I'm going to put that NAACP sign out at the front right there and let them know black folks stay here. But like, that's about it. Like, President McClanahan, I am not putting nothing out. Don't call me.
Don't call me.
That's all. Like, I went to a protest one time and folks was like, somebody was like, man, we're glad to see you, man. We need to see if we can get this protest to move. I ain't here for y'all. I'm here to protect these kids. I'm here to make sure that y'all don't mess over them, because like, I want to be on the front line with these legal observers in case we have to sue y'all.
Right.
I'm not here for y'all.
Right.
Like, don't think I am.
So we got Gene to rescue. Gene come to rescue everybody. He comes to everybody, that black and white, and make sure that the march goes on as it's planned and get on out of here.
Nope. My job is equity. It's clear. Like, that's what I do, and that ain't an all-person fight. And people get mad when you say that. When we supposed nah. Like I saw you people putting Black Lives Matter signs in your yard. You are going in the exact opposite way of the sign that you placed in your front yard. That is not what that means. And man, I tell you, it is something else. But and President McClanahan, you talked about it. Some of it is built by these Sambos too. Yeah. And that's just what it is. But I can tell you, look, just like my ancestors, if you come tell me we free, I ain't waiting around for the end of the speech. I'm not going to be respectful. I'm not waiting to hear what the final word is. I'm getting up out of there. Like I'm scatting. Like that's what they call it, the great scatter. That's what your people did. As soon as he said he's free, like, I ain't waiting around to see what the rest of what he got to say. I'm out. Like that's what our people did. That's what we from. That's where we from.
Don't say no more. You said enough. I'm out of here. And and the other part to that is where we settle, man. We have to understand. We have to make it better. But you can't make it better unless you strategize the work. I'm oftentimes talked about the difference between NAACP and other organizations. We always strategize and we always training. We don't send people out to do this work unless they're trained. There's a limit what we'll do, but when we need heavy fighters, we're gonna make sure you're equipped to go and handle everything. Just like we were talking about the education system here. To the credit, we pay wage for a person to be in positions. So when everything happens, they're in position to help. They should. If it's not illegal or unethical, you should be in a position to help if you can help in the position.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I've seen us, as an organization historically, create seats, right?
Yeah.
Create seats.
Right.
I've seen that happen,
right,
where we put black people specifically in some seats, and they got there and said, "Well, I got to serve all people."
Oh man, I'm telling you.
Like if you don't sit your black, that's the kind of stuff like it makes you wonder. And when people say, well, folks weren't really interested in redistricting, they didn't get very involved, it's because stuff like that. And when they put people in seats, they got there and said crap like that, even though 90% of your voting base was black.
Yeah.
Like now, it's gonna be a little different with some of these new maps. Y'all got to get out there and actually campaign, right? But at the same time, like this is the kind of stuff that they've been fed over time. So that what else you expected? And then not only that, President McClanahan, as we look at the East Baton Rouge Parish prisoners, I saw a video yesterday of prisoners. Offenders that were in that facility, because it's not a prison, it's a jail, but offenders that's in that facility, right? And people were out there doing the social justice caravan that they do once a month. Miss Linda Frank, Reverend Anderson, and all of those folks, right? Larry McGriffin and the BR for the People, Miss Key. They're out there all the time, right? And you could hear those offenders screaming through the bars because they saw people outside. We don't have air conditioning. We don't have cold water. They got us in lockdown. Like, ain't much changed. Ain't much changed. It's changed for some black folks, right? And whether you debate the factual nature of Willie Lynch or not, Willie Lynch talked about this in his letters where he was going to give some of y'all enough, right, so that y'all could be quiet. But Willie Lynch highlighted this. He talked about this. He said that some of y'all they're gonna lose track if you just give some of them a little bit more than you give others, right? These men are in this jail without air, in lockdown, without the proper necessities to be treated like humans. And you'll see some people say, well, they could just not go there. That don't equate to not being treated like humans, especially when they're a commodity. But this company is not only using tax dollars to take care of them, but they're also making money off of those bodies that are in jail, right? That's just the reality. In some parishes, that's a whole tax base for the city. So that argument doesn't hold weight when you actually look at the context of how big a business jailing is and jailing people that look like you and I are. That's not a real argument. That's just stupidity because you never picked up the phone to Google anything but Jay-Z or Beyonce. Right? But the reality of it is that this is a real thing. This is a real travesty, a real crime. And I have no faith that any accountability will be brought to that. I have no faith that Parish Prison would ever get any air conditioning. I have no faith that there's no bags of ice on the way there now, because we've come to accept those things. And this Juneteenth, that's a reminder for me that we've come to accept whatever people give us. And that's just what it is. People say, well, I worked hard and I got this and I got that, and I'll pull myself out by my bootstraps. I'm like, show me this crap.
Right.
Show me this crap.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. To think, we know society was not set up for the masses of black folks, totally to assimilate and to evolve and to do well, because society is set up to make money off of people suffering, black folks suffering. You look at the poor education system makes money. people in jail make money. People on the side of the road make money. That's all set up for economics, but we have to do a better job at that. You know, when you get in positions to change stuff, change law, change rules, you should change them. You know, you should say, well, they're suffering, as you alluded to. If I did it, they did. So if they did pull themselves up, they need to suffer. That's their lot in life. That's bull crap. That's bull crap.
Yeah, it is. It is totally bull crap. So if you ain't got nothing else from the Juneteenth, so get out of that all lives matter crap. Ain't nobody freed us because, you know, you can't free property that you stole. We were liberated by a president that wanted to maintain the union.
Right.
It was not because he loved black folk. He wanted to maintain the union. And Juneteenth was a day that black folk commemorated to remember the blood that was shed in slavery and the fact that we were a resilient population.
Jay, you bring up a point, and I say this all the time, not only in dealing with Juneteenth, but in black folks in our lives, period. You know, everybody said, well, it ain't happening to me, so I'm fine. But at some point in time, it's coming to your door. Why not get involved now? Because it's coming. If it don't come to your door, it's going to come to your sister's door, your cousin's door, your auntie's, somebody, your friends, or somebody know that hell is coming to their door. Some storm is coming. So you're best to be prepared. You know, we talk about the storm coming, the hurricanes that come to Louisiana. They said be prepared for the storm that's going to come. Be prepared for the storm of your life. It's going to come. Why not get with persons that are already trained to do disaster relief, disaster recovery? This life disaster relief is done through the NAACP and other organizations like this. We're prepared. So, but if you don't want to be prepared, I was sharing with a group the other day, Gene, and I'm gonna be quiet. I was up in Vidalia, historical Vidalia and Faraday, right? And I was sharing with the group, you know, you don't have to call me now. Don't. At some point in time, when stuff comes your way and you get the knock on your door, you might have cussed me out the day before, but when that knock comes, the first name you're going to call, where's Mike McClanahan and the NAACP?
That's just how it is. That's just how it is. So help out before it shows up at your doorstep, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. All right, you've been here with the NAACP presidents. This is your local branch president, Eugene Collins, alongside our statewide convention president, President Michael McClanahan today. We had a conversation about Juneteenth. We got real deep into it. We dispelled some myths, talked some truths, and just put some other bull to bed.
Right.
And we also let you know if anybody ever decide to burn down anything, we are not the folks to call. We are not the folks to call. We will not come out there to help.
A bucket of water up. We don't bring no smart water out there, none of that.
I assure you that we will not be out there burning anything with people.
We're not going to burn.
Especially not anything that you can prove. But we will not come help. That is not it. This country has never paid for what it stole.
Right.
And that's what today should be a reminder of. This country's never paid anything. All right, you've been here with NAACP presidents. We want to thank super producer Johnny Domino for producing the show here today.
JD.
Yeah, he in the house, and we're going to talk to y'all next week.